Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin tonight in the Northwest Territories. A former Yellowknife City councillor has been found not guilty of 6 of the 14 criminal charges he was facing. The verdict came after nearly 2 days of deliberation. Robin Williams was on trial facing several charges, including assault and sexual assault. The CBC's Nadir Hashmi has more on the verdict.
A warning, this story contains details of sexual violence. The jury delivered its verdict on the Robin Williams trial, but only on some of the charges he was facing. It found Williams not guilty on 4 charges of assault and 2 charges of assault by choking and mischief. The jury wasn't able to reach consensus on the other 8 charges. Some of these were of sexual assault, assault causing bodily harm, and uttering threats. Williams served 1 term as a city councillor from 2018 to 2022. He pleaded not guilty to all the 14 charges. As the jury's decision was delivered in court, Williams cried and his family members hugged each other. Williams' defense lawyer Evan McIntyre told CBC News that he and his client were pleased with the decision. Prosecutor Brian Brenze said the Crown respected the jury's verdict. Supreme Court Justice David Gates declared a mistrial on the remaining 8 charges. The prosecutor must now decide whether or not to stay those charges or ask for a new trial. The case is scheduled to be back in court February 24th. Nadir Hashmi, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Nunavut's Member of Parliament wants funding for Indigenous victims of sexual violence restored. The federal government gave the Public Prosecution Service of Canada, or PPSC, $23.5 million in 2021. It was meant to help support Indigenous victims of sexual violence through the North's court system. The money was slated to last for 3 years. The PPSC confirmed the funding ended last year and wasn't renewed. Nunavut's MP says the programs funded by that money provide crucial knowledge specific to the North.
I think a lot is at stake. Victims and their families will continue to struggle. Victims and their families will not get the supports that they need, which will be exacerbated because they'll have to still be home in their overcrowded housing situations with the lack of mental health supports in our communities.
Canada's Justice and Finance ministers refused interviews about the issue. The PPSC also wouldn't let its chief federal prosecutors speak to the CBC. Controversy over the election for Gwich'in Grand Chief continues. Today, there was a swearing-in ceremony for Frederick Blake Jr., who won the election back in August. But the Gwich'in Tribal Council didn't authorize it. Sarah Kromolowski has that story.
Frederick Blake Jr. accepted the role of Gwich'in Grand Chief today, despite a resolution from the Gwich'in Tribal Council's board to delay his swearing-in. The celebration for Blake was organized by the Gwich'in Council in his home community of Sigachek. There was a swearing-in ceremony where many people congratulated Blake on the role. Among them, Northwest Territories MP Michael McLeod, Dene Nation Chief George Mackenzie, and RCMP representatives, but members of the Gwich'in Tribal Council's board were absent. The Tribal Council announced today in a social media post that it will be fighting an NWT Supreme Court decision affirming Blake as the elected Grand Chief. The Tribal Council's board also said the swearing-in would be postponed to March. Controversy about the election for Gwich'in Grand Chief began months ago. Blake defeated incumbent Ken Kikavicic in the election back in August. Kikavicic later appealed that result, alleging that Blake broke election rules. The Elections Committee found the accusation unfounded, but the board declared the election invalid and called a new election. Blake challenged that in the NWT Supreme Court. The court ruled in Blake's favor in a decision earlier this month. As of Friday afternoon, the Gwich'in Tribal Council had not yet filed an appeal. CBC reached out to Blake and the Gwich'in Tribal Council for interviews, but neither party responded. Sarah Kromolowski, CBC News, Yellowknife.
After a 3-day strike earlier this month, Nunavik teachers still don't have a contract. They've been without one since 2023. And union representatives say negotiations are at a standstill. The union says it's waiting for a response from the school board, which is currently without a negotiation mandate. The board needs to negotiate more funding from Quebec before returning to the bargaining table. The Association of Employees of Northern Quebec represents teachers.
I'm very disappointed in the government and also at the board. I guess the government doesn't know how it works in the North. I guess they don't know how much things cost. They don't realize the illustration of that is happening at the school board right now. So I guess that's why they are not responding favorably to the school board in their demands to have more funding.
The Kativik Regional School Board is not providing interviews. The union says 3 main issues are up for negotiation. Teachers want leave when their homes are without water for several days. They want an increase to the staff retention bonus, which hasn't changed in more than 2 decades. And they want to be consulted before students with a history of violence return to the classroom. Women and gender-diverse people are the fastest growing demographic in Canadian prisons. Now, researchers with the University of New Brunswick say prisons are unprepared to meet their needs. A study found few correctional facilities in Canada and the North have abortion and contraception policies. Katrin Pilkington has more.
Having an abortion is complicated for anyone, anywhere. But imagine being here, in the North and in jail. One of the physicians working at this jail told me she's seeing significantly more female inmates over the last 3 years. It's actually something that's happening across the country. It's something researchers are looking into. The report says without a clear policy or plan, when it comes to incarcerated women, their care can get wrapped up in layers of bureaucracy.
You can think of all the different types of delay you can have. The person who doesn't know if they have a right to this and so hesitates before asking for it. The person they ask doesn't really know the answer and takes it up the line. And the person up the line doesn't really know the answer because they're justice. And that's sort of a health question. And so they take it over across and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Eventually it gets to the Opal Clinic who say, okay, well, sorry, but you've taken so long that now we no longer can offer you services and we're going to have to fly you south. So that's the danger.
That danger can include health complications. The researchers asked all 3 territorial governments about their policies and procedures when it comes to accessing abortion and reproductive services. The Yukon said there's no record of any women inmates having given birth while sentenced or remanded to Whitehorse Correctional Centre. As such, there's no set policy or protocol that deals with such an event in Yukon. We reached out to the Yukon government to see if anything has changed since the study was published. They said they had nothing to add. The GNWT also doesn't have a formal policy. Officials told CBC pregnant inmates would be referred to health and social services. Nunavut does ensure inmates have access to treatment during a medical emergency. It says this would include procedures such as a planned or unplanned termination of pregnancy, but its policy ends there. So is that enough? Several advocates say when it comes to stigmatized healthcare like abortions, correctional facilities should have clear and specific policies. The Reproductive Justice Project believes policies are the bare minimum.
Having a policy that outlines exactly what's available, what needs to be made available, would be a huge benefit to people who are incarcerated, so they know what they can ask for.
Researchers say collecting more data could help governments better understand the issue and ensure they're offering dignified and humane care. Katrin Pilkington, CBC News, Whitehorse.
It's official. A trade war with the United States is about to begin. This afternoon, the White House confirmed the U.S. will impose tariffs on Canadian goods starting tomorrow. And U.S. President Donald Trump later said there's nothing we can do to stop them. The CBC's Chris Reyes has the latest.
Nothing written down or signed, but President Donald Trump remained firm on putting tariffs on Canada, China, and Mexico. The details are still unclear, but he did say this.
Not a negotiating tool?
No, it's not. No, it's a pure economic. We have big deficits with, as you know, with all 3 of them.
Trump seemed to indicate that a 25% tariff on Canadian goods will still be implemented tomorrow as promised. But he said tariffs on oil and gas will now be reduced to 10%.
We're going to put tariffs on oil and gas. That'll happen fairly soon. I think around the 18th of February. You see the power of the tariff. I mean, the tariff is good. And nobody can compete with us because we have by far the biggest piggy bank And so that'll take place very quickly.
Trump said he's building a tariff wall, but has yet to sign an executive order to make it official. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada is ready to deliver a forceful and immediate response to the tariffs. Ashley Burke has that part of the story.
Justin Trudeau meeting with his Canada-U.S. counsel, experts helping him navigate the crisis at a critical time.
I won't sugarcoat it. Our nation could be facing difficult times in the coming days and weeks. I know Canadians might be anxious and worried, but I want them to know the federal government, and indeed all orders of government, have their backs.
Trudeau said Canada's prepared for every scenario to deal with whatever Trump does next.
His motto is to create as much chaos and instability out there as possible in order to drive investment out of Canada into the United States.
Others say Trump's strategy is simple. He's all about power, control, and money. That's it.
These things are what we have to respond to and have to make sure we're standing tall against.
As Canada tries to fend off a trade war, ministers are still warning the U.S. that tariffs will hurt them too.
Tariffs makes life a lot more expensive for Americans, and I encourage our American friends that they should also be sharing that widely.
While the country braces for impact, the government's plan includes cutting the red tape on interprovincial trade so Canada can rely on the U.S. less. Sources say the government's plan includes $37 billion worth of tariffs on American goods that could rise to more than $100 billion if Trump doesn't back down, plus a multi-billion-dollar aid package to help shore up the Canadian economy if needed. But all of this will depend on the severity of what Trump does next. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Canada-U.S. border is a major trigger point in this country's relationship with the Trump administration. CBC News went for a ride-along with an RCMP border patrol in Quebec earlier this week. As Catherine Tunney reports, it's part of a show of force in response to Trump's tariff threats.
If I can't have proper monitoring, it means nothing.
It's a bleak, frigid day as RCMP Sergeant Daniel Dubois makes his rounds, looking for people trying to cross the border illegally, either into or from the U.S.
So people will cross here.
The day's freezing temperatures and blustering winds, just part of being a Mountie. But there's another element he and his team are weathering these days, a political storm.
People do think, like everywhere else in different work environments, about the election itself. The only difference with us is it will affect our work.
Earlier this week, CBC News shadowed Dubois on a stormy day near the Quebec-New York border, waiting for tips to come in and checking known crossing points for any evidence.
No footprints today.
With U.S. President Donald Trump citing concerns with the northern border as a reason to impose punishing tariffs, pressure is mounting on this side to act, heightening stress.
Right now, we don't know how things are going to go. So that causes anxiety, for the membership.
The RCMP says today's weather is likely keeping things quiet along the border, but all it takes is a shift in temperature or policy to start creating problems. Roxham Road, once the epicenter of Canada's migrant crisis, when tens of thousands of people used this unofficial crossing to enter Canada during Trump's first term. Now the re-elected president is cracking down even harder on immigration. That has the RCMP preparing for a possible northern surge, this time under updated laws. These days, northbound asylum claimants are turned back to the U.S. unless they can stay undetected for 14 days, potentially making the RCMP's job much harder.
We're facing a reality that our patrol officers would have to respond anywhere and everywhere in the area.
As the day ends, some relief for Dubois. No one has been spotted attempting to cross today, no kids in the cold. But with the weather promising to warm up, and in an ever-shifting political climate, there's no telling how long that peace will last. Catherine Tunney, CBC News, Hemmingford, Quebec.
Canada's GDP dropped in November, down 0.2%. The latest data out today from Statistics Canada says it's the largest monthly contraction in a year. The shrinkage was led by a drop in output in mining and quarrying, and also in oil and gas extraction. Goods producing industries fell by 0.6%, and the utilities sector dropped 3.6% in November. The Canada Post strike slowed the transportation and warehousing sectors, along with work stoppages at ports in Montreal and British Columbia. But economists are pointing to a bounce back in December.
The Kanuipita National Inuit Health Survey team is going to every community in Nunavut, speaking to Inuit about their health and wellness. And every answer will help us as Inuit determine our own priorities for a healthier future. Together, we will answer the question, Kanuipita, how are we? Find out when we're coming to your community. Learn more at qnihs.ca.
I've never seen anything like this before.
The situation has changed very quickly.
In your once stolen vehicle in West Africa.
That is crazy. Jumped in the car and then off they went.
I want my truck back. 300% increase in auto theft.
300%.
It's organized crime, well financed.
They are selling vehicles that are insecure.
They're working on it.
We hear that from a lot of automakers.
Yeah.
We think we found your car.
Oh my goodness.
This is CBC North on your smart TV, because CBC News is now streaming local. Local news and weather on your connected TV or favorite device. CBC News North, streaming now.
It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it?
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
All of this, just single detached homes?
Yes.
What do we know? I think we can explain.
About that with Andrew Chang.
In the Yukon, a Nochonaik Dun elder who fought to protect the Peel watershed has died. Jimmy Johnny spent much of his life educating people about the watershed. He was also an advocate for its conservation. Friends say Johnny was a man of integrity, and his love for the land and desire to protect it is what he'll be remembered for. Johnny was one of the Yukon's most respected hunting guides. He was also a residential school survivor and a keeper of traditional knowledge. 5 Nunavut communities are getting new airport terminals by the spring. The combined cost is $75 million. The communities getting new buildings are Kimmeroot, Chesterfield Inlet, Nauyat, Whale Cove, and Kugluktuk. The director of Nunavut Airport says the old buildings were up to 50 years old, and it's about time communities had enhanced, modern terminals.
There'll be a much bigger building, much more seating, much more spacious, much more convenient baggage receiving and baggage drop-off, baggage pickup, more efficient to operate for sure. They'll have a backup power component. So at these sites, in the event of a prolonged power outage, we'll be able to provide ongoing service with auxiliary power.
Rankin Inlet will also get a new airport terminal. That will cost $80 million and be finished in 2027. In Cambridge Bay, Nunavut, archaeologists and local Inuit are looking to excavate more sod houses, or kamak, in the area. Locals say those discoveries help them feel pride in their culture. Samuel Watt has the story.
Yeah. These locals and archaeologists are documenting a part of Inuit history that spans thousands of years. The sod house, which belongs to the Tule, was uncovered near Cambridge Bay in 2004. Emily Angulalik was part of the group involved in that project.
I'm in awe of how our, Inuit, fellow Inuit, like our Inuit have lived for thousands of years.
Sod houses were often propped up with stone, bones, or driftwood. On top were layers of lush animal fur and soil. They could keep families warm all winter with the aid of just a single huluk. Angulalek says those dwellings make her feel proud of her culture, and it creates a spark among the elders.
Their stories come back and it becomes so enriching because, oh, this is when I remember what it was like. This is what was used, or similar type of tool was used.
The Kitikmeot Heritage Society has been working with archaeologists like Dr. Max Friesen for decades. He's been researching sod houses in the Inuvialuit and Kitikmeot regions since 1986. He's heading back to Cambridge Bay this summer to look for more, but there's a worry on his mind.
The land is getting looser and starting to kind of flow and be easier to erode.
That's from rising water levels, storms, melting permafrost, and there'll be conversations about what to do next.
Do we want to, for example, excavate a few of these sites before they're gone? Or do we want to just document them?
To preserve that knowledge for generations to come. Samuel Watt, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Youth in Betchakon NWT are using digital storytelling to document elders' teachings. The program is organized by the Clichon government. Participants captured their first videos this past week. Each person was responsible for producing, shooting, and editing their material. And today, they gathered at the Cultural Center in Betchakon to share their work.
We have a group of young people who completed a program with support from young elders, taking the Clichon digital storytelling program. They've put a program, digitalized a moving picture and completed it. Now we're going to be screening to the public.
For the first 3 days of the week, we introduced pre-production, production, and post-production to the students. We had 16 sign up, and so they were learning everything about how to make a video.
It was pretty good. It was amazing. We have lots of help. We have good instructors, so she was really helpful. And as a young people nowadays, they know how to use a laptop and iPad and everything.
Just engage with the video. Look at your learning.
So they're starting from the ground up, and they did amazingly, like natural storytellers. Some of them got right into editing and continued on to do the elders editing as well, which was amazing to see.
If you look on YouTube, there's barely any videos about the Northwest Territory. And when they do talk about Canada, they only talk about the southern provinces. I just wanted to be sort of like this knowledge dump, I guess, about the community that we live in and the surrounding communities too.
digital camera,
We're looking at this project to continue the training in the future. This is more like an introduction. The program that we're interested in is doing more planning to continue the training to gain knowledge in communication, and later on continue the production to keep the production of the activities on the land using digital, so we could continue to keep our cultural language and our way of life strong.
A group of East and Southeast Asian women and gender non-conforming drummers are performing in the Yukon. Ra Taiko is from Toronto. They'll be performing in Whitehorse tonight at the Yukon Arts Centre. Young Park and YJ are with the group. They spoke earlier today about how the performance can empower communities and fight against oppression.
I think what's unique about Raw, at least for our theatrical concerts, is really the storytelling and how we aim to weave that into the drumming in like I guess an embodied way, how we perform those stories, how we tell them verbally, orally, and then how we perform them through the drum.
Raw members and then Raw alums share their personal stories about oppressions and struggles as Asian people. experiencing our modern society and how we are navigating through a lot of what you mentioned, racism, misogyny, and how we try to find support and community through our identity. There's many types of Asian women. There's many types of Asian Canadian women, and that we're not quiet and shy and meek, but we can be very loud and let's just say we're very opinionated and we have lots of things to say.
That was Young Park and YJ from the group Raw Taiko. Now let's take a look at the weather. And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a great weekend.
In your once stolen vehicle in West Africa.
That is crazy.
Jumped in the car and then off they went.
I want my truck back. 300% increase in auto theft.
300%.
It's organized crime, well-financed. They are selling vehicles that are insecure.
They're working on it.
We hear that from a lot of automakers.
Yeah.
We think we found your car.
Oh my goodness.
Ding! On your marks.
Get set, go! Every second counts!
They're making more money than they have ever made in the history of the music business.
I'm a nanny.
Like Mary Poppins?
It's like the Force. Sorry, have you seen Star Wars?
No. Very predictable, you know that?
I'm hardly predictable. I'm deadly serious. Is it okay with you?
I am enjoying myself. Thank you for the invitation.
We're here to get it done. We're here to show up and show off.
Here we go, let's play the feud, Canadian style, here we go.
Family Feud Canada. Watch free on CBC Gem.
I'm not special. Cancer happens to people all the time. I take 1 mile at a time, 26 miles a day. I want to set an example that'll never be forgotten. Sometimes it feels endless. But the pain I feel is nothing. I've seen little kids in so much pain. Somewhere, the hurting must stop.
Carrie Fox ran more than halfway across Canada to raise money for cancer research. Every year, millions of people around the world continue the marathon of hope in his name.